and she has a particular interest in athletic management, women's health, chronic pain and mental health. She's a medical cannabis prescriber and a founder of Your Integrated Health. And in her downtime she trains and races in iron person triathlon.
It's a brand.
It's a brand, oh okay, it's a trademark, sorry. Iron Man triathlon, and it's completed in 2 world championships. So she's going to talk about the endocannabinoid system and the therapeutic effects of medical cannabis and how cannabis can potentially benefit the athlete. And I remember a few years ago there was a snowboarder who actually lost his medal because he was on cannabis, but I'm not sure. You may be talking about that?
Similar situation.
I don't want to steal your thunder, but let's give a big warm Nimbin welcome for Dr. Carolyn Bosak. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Can I see it? I like to see it. Yeah. I'm an integrative GP, and so that means I like to delve into the why, not just the what. Which I suppose led me to cannabis, and so one of my interests, as was mentioned, is athlete healthcare. So I'm an athlete myself, and I'm very interested in enabling people to have longevity in sport and exercise, particularly since so there's one of the longest studies that's been going on in women is called the Australian Longitudinal Health Study. And it's been going on for over 25 years, and the single most important determinant in function in older years is actually exercise. So it goes beyond smoking, alcohol, family history. So exercise is an important determinant of function, and that's measured by ability to get out of a chair, ability to walk 1 kilometre, ability to lift 1 kilogram, which sadly, as I see in practice, many people get to the stage where they can't perform those basic functions, and as you see, people become quite dependent. So I'm all about keeping people active for the remainder of their lives. I'll talk to you a bit today about how the benefits of medicinal cannabis and how that can relate to the athlete. Because I'm sure it'll eventually be part of the athlete's toolbox one day, but at the moment there's quite a few restrictions and things standing in the way of that. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted here about the benefits of cannabis, because it's been around for thousands of years, clearly safe and effective, and once you understand the endocannabinoid system, which is the body's own system of regulating and bringing back to sort of balance every function in the body, then you understand why cannabis can benefit the athlete. So for those of you who don't know, so the endocannabinoid system was discovered only in the 1990s, and so it brings about, the scientific term is called homeostasis. So what that means is every day our cells and body systems, enzyme systems undergo either trauma or underactivity, overactivity, and that's due to everyday life. And so the endocannabinoid system brings all of that back into balance. So it trumps dopamine, it trumps endorphins, it trumps melatonin, it trumps serotonin. So the endocannabinoids are in control of all of that for every system in the body, and surprisingly, despite that, it's still not taught about. So it was discovered over 30 years ago, and it's still not taught about in medical school, and most doctors would have no idea about it, which is why it's, I suppose, their basis that it's still not scientific to use cannabis in medicine. With all the potential benefits of medicinal cannabis, you can see how it would benefit the athlete. Because not to introduce another drug into the mix, but I like to say sport is life on steroids, because it really stresses your body systems and cells, and so you really need a good endocannabinoid system to bring all of that back into balance. Otherwise, you end up sick or injured. I suppose the potential benefits start with sleep. So athletes generally are at risk of poor quality and quantity sleep for lots of different reasons. So travel, over caffeinating, nighttime training, overtraining simply, and anxiety, and medicinal cannabis can help with that. Mood, so athletes are very prone to anxiety, be it sports performance anxiety or even indirect anxiety due to other factors such as poor sleep, over caffeinating, travel, all of those things. And pain is the constant companion of the athlete, and so you've probably heard about how CBD oil can potentially help recovery. So what that's referring to is that when you exercise or so when you train, you get microscopic exercise-related muscle damage, so muscle cell damage, and that's the potent anti-inflammatory action of CBD helps to bring that back into repair, and so then you can get back to training and competing earlier. And without a good endocannabinoid system, you can sometimes you can get prolonged recovery, and you're at risk of that when when you're overtraining. All of those factors are all interrelated. With para athletes, they tend to have neuropathic pain, so it's a different type of pain, and they benefit more from THC. So muscle spasticity is treated. We use that in medicinal cannabis is used to treat muscle spasticity in certain conditions such as MS and Parkinson's. In the same vein, medicinal cannabis can be used for muscle tension, and certain sports have realised that by trial and error. And so, as you mentioned about snowboarding, snowboarding, skiing, surfing, they tend to gravitate towards it because it, by releasing muscle tension, actually assists with technique and success. Cannabis is immunoprotective, so athletes are very prone to frequent infections due to suppression of the immune system, and and all of those factors that I mentioned about sleep, anxiety, all the same factors, and overtraining reduce your immune system, and medicinal cannabis can help with that because it's a potent antioxidant. Interesting developments are now in its neuroprotective role. So there's a lot of trials going on with concussion, particularly in NFL. Vaping or taking medicinal cannabis prior to sports which are high risk of concussion actually can improve the recovery and reduce the severity of the concussion episode, and it's also used as a treatment, or potentially used as a treatment, but that's all in the trial phase still. Unlike Beck, I'm much older, and I prefer to work off paper. Old school. And in the trial phases, I suppose, in the animal studies, bone health, so it's been shown in animals, cannabis has been shown to promote bone healing, and you've probably heard of athletes who get gut-related issues when they race, and I've certainly been subject to that, so you get nausea, vomiting, the abdominal pain, bleeding from the bowel, and so CBD has been shown to reduce the incidence of that. So a recent meta-analysis of 11 studies covering over 46,000 athletes, and that included athletes of various abilities and ages, and included professional athletes, showed that around a quarter were using cannabis in the past 12 months, and that's despite the fact that THC is still WADA, which is World Anti-Doping Authority, illegal for in competition. So people are still continuing to use it. So because of its banned status, as you mentioned before, it does turn up in sporting media quite often. The last one of note was Sha'Carri Richardson. She's a US sprinter, and she missed out on the Tokyo Olympics because she tested positive. So her mother died. She was using it for stress, and leading into the Olympics tested positive. And even though she was going to be her ban actually would have been before the Olympics ended, they decided not to include her on the team, which seems to be a bit of a moral judgment. Our own Lauren Jackson's a basketballer, so she had to retire because of a disabling knee condition, and so chronic pain due to osteoarthritis, and found relief in cannabis, and so much so that it made her want to return to the sport. And so unfortunately she's been unable to, and she couldn't tolerate anti-inflammatories, so she had anti-inflammatories that could cause quite severe gut problems, which they do. They're a dirty drug, and even though CBD is the ban on CBD was lifted in 2018, WADA basically going quiet and not giving her a temporary use exemption for use. So she has been chosen now on the Australian team, and unfortunately is going to have to forgo her treatment, which means back on the anti-inflammatory bandwagon. So, which is absolutely crazy and frustrating, but it seems that no one wants to make a decision. And Michael Phelps, the swimmer, was filmed smoking a joint and received his ban. So they have relaxed some of the rules around it, in that now the threshold for, because they urine test, the threshold for THC testing has been increased because it's only now for in competition. So that means that obviously if you test for a low level, that can then account for the fact that you used it, outside of competition. So they're, obviously gradually relaxing things, but still it remains banned. And I don't think that with Lauren, even though she's using only CBD, I don't think she wants to take that risk of testing positive and then, be splashed across the media. So in 2011, WADA defended its position on its continued ban in the Journal of Sports Medicine, discussing why, based on the three criteria. So the first one is that it was for the potential to be performance enhancing. Now, it actually is the opposite. It actually is what's called ergolytic, so, and it has been shown it reduces your, so in terms of your cardiovascular abilities, it actually reduces that, so it's ergolytic. However, what they did say was what I found cannabis could help athletes better perform under pressure and to alleviate stress experienced before and during competition. So that was their basis for that criteria, despite the fact that anti-anxiety medications, sedatives and sedative analgesics are still allowed. Risk to health, they cited, that was very tenuous, and they cited very irrelevant studies which showed that it reduced exercise capacity in quite diseased people, so with heart and lung problems already. So yes, it reduced it in those people, but yeah, completely irrelevant to an athlete. But more to the point is that they believe that it violates the spirit of the sport. And so at the time, so WADA was formed in 1999, and by 2004 they came up with their banned list of substances, and THC was included on there because at that stage it was illegal in most countries around the world, and they said that its use is not consistent with the athlete as a role model for young people around the world. And look, they're definitely evolving, and obviously it's becoming, laws are changing, prohibitions are being lifted, but it looks like that they don't want to drive that change. So unfortunately, there's going to be a lot more time before athletes get the green card. So in terms of the evidence supporting its use, it remains basically very low in terms of if you're going to look at the actual evidence. So the sporting industry, unfortunately, is driven by evidence-based decisions and protocols, and there is this low evidence to support its use in sport. But despite this, it actually has been growing exponentially when you look at the study, when you look at surveys, so a lot of athletes are using it. So the lack of evidence sort of relates similarly to use of medicinal cannabis as a whole, and that's because it was only discovered in the 1990s, so it's only been studied since then, so there's a low body of evidence. The studies are actually very poorly designed and irrelevant and less specific to sport. And they often study THC, CBD separately and synthetic forms, which, as you know, you need the whole plant to, with the entourage effect to actually have its optimal effect. So yeah, so there's a few reviews done of the studies available, and they come up with widely different interpretations. So some will say it's potentially performance detracting, some will say it's potentially can help performance, and some are neutral, and that's all looking at the same evidence. But they all say, yeah, we need better quality studies. So that's where it's at in terms of the evidence. Despite this lack of evidence, a study in 2020 revealed CBD use is extensive in high-level sports people since the lifting of the ban in 2018. And but the problem with that is that in many countries it's unregulated, and so what that means is that you basically can't be sure as to what the exact ingredients are. And a 2017 study showed that they studied a whole heap of different products, and less than 30% were true to their label. So, and that's just useful for anyone to know anyway when you're buying stuff from anywhere, is that so half underestimated, 1/4 overestimated, and 1/5 contain THC in these CBD products in both natural and synthetic forms. And then another study in 2020 showed only 3 of 25 random specimen CBD products were within plus or minus 20%. So it's basically a mixed bag, and you basically don't know what you're getting. And they often contain other cannabinoids that are banned by WADA. So only CBD is accepted and all the other ones are not. So there's a lot of trials underway, particularly in NFL in US, and so NFL are running a few trials with CBD and THC. They're using whole plant, which is great. And they're doing it in concussion and muscular pain, and particularly because they've got a big problem with concussion and that encephalopathy, which you see after repeated concussions, which is what Muhammad Ali had. And they've got a high rate of addiction to opiates in their athletes, so they're being a bit proactive there. It's good. And a recent trial in Florida showed that THC actually improved function in people with that syndrome. So going back to the general population who potentially want to remain active as their bodies sort of start to say no and a lot of pain. That's why I get patients that I see, oh no, I can't do that because I got this foot issue or whatever. So should we just give CBD to everyone, or THC or otherwise? So as an integrative doctor, my approach always is to deal with the underlying causes. So I think the best approach always is, as Beck had mentioned before, is do the work of looking at the underlying causes, and that's looking at your sleep and looking at these things in detail. So your sleep hygiene, looking at your stress management techniques, your diet in great detail, so looking at what oils you're using, what milks you're using, what sort of toxins, what plastics, what personal care products you're using. All of these things affect your pain response and affect your general health. But having said that, you do get to the stage sometimes where you are incapable of working on these things, either through mood or physical limitations. So in those situations, my approach is so we start medicinal cannabis. I plant the seed of saying, okay, well, when you can feel that you can start working on this, we start working on this first thing, and not overwhelming, and we start working on one thing at a time. And it's amazing, particularly with CBD, how it improves motivation to such a point where people then start to work. But it's a matter of planting the seed first, because otherwise we're at risk of just providing the silver bullet in the bottle, and it's never ever going to work just of its own accord. You have to always do the hard work, as Beck mentioned before. You have to be prepared to do that for it to work in a holistic approach and for a long-term approach. So in my practice, I more so get people who've got, either sports injuries and chronic pain related to old injuries, so past athletes, more so than the athletes who are wanting to use it proactively at this stage. I've had some, but not many. It's mostly for people who've been past athletes or just weekend warriors. So I think, and the other thing is with our TGA, you have to qualify in terms of certain criteria, and just using it for recovery is not going to cut it. However, you can always find something. There'll be something there'll be a sleep issue, there'll be a pain issue, so there's usually something that will qualify you to use it. In summary, with its known benefits, medicinal cannabis can potentially have a place in the management of many health issues associated with athletes and in the general population, but it's got a long way to go in terms of being able to be used with professional athletes more because of the legislation. But it could certainly benefit us lesser athletes and be able to enable us to keep training, because that's the name of the game. Keep moving. Thanks.
Have we got any questions? That was really interesting. Thank you, Carolyn. Are there any questions? Oh, she's running away. She'll stay here and answer any questions. In sport, yes. Cannabis.